All right, UFC 284 this weekend from Perth, Australia. In the main event for the lightweight championship, Alexander the Great Volkanovski looks to claim his second championship, trying to be a double champ if he can go up and take down Islam Makhachev and be the only second man to beat Makhachev inside the octagon. In the co-main event for the interim featherweight championship, we've got Rodrigues taking on Josh Emmett. 13 fights in this card, and yes, it is very top heavy with the two title fights and especially just the main event, but it is what it is. UFC 284 this weekend from Australia. And folks, if you haven't yet though, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for some more UFC here on the channel. So our first fight, Tukhugov taking on Brenner. I don't know why this fight was really made. You look at Tukhugov, for Tukhugov, his last fight all the way back in 2021, it was a win over Ricardo Ramos. And yes, the guy has not fought in a while, but I mean, you just don't think that this fight's going to be all that even. I mean, you look at his fight against Hakeem Dawodu. He's got a close fight with Dawodu that he loses. He beats Kevin Aguilar before that. Has a draw against Leon Murphy. Lose to Moicano before that. But I mean, really, Tukhugov is 5-2-1 in the UFC. He's taking on a guy in Brenner who I'm surprised is even in the UFC, if we're being honest. He's 2-2 in his last 4 fights. His last 2 were wins. A rear naked choke finish over Victor Nunez in 4 minutes in his last fight. Nunez was 3-1 going into that fight, and then a win over Alderson Ramos, who was 7-5 going into that fight, beaten by armbar in 3 minutes. Before that, for Brenner, back-to-back losses. One on WCC Natural Selection in 2019 by unanimous decision, losing to Sergey Andreev, a fighter who's 11-7, and after that, losing to 6-0 Gabriel Santos by unanimous decision. It's just weird again because Brenner does not really have, I would say, the past experience to really prove that he is a UFC caliber guy. That's really all it is. I mean, when you look at Brenner's past, of course, I mean, you see a lot of submissions. That's where he gets all of his fights won. He has lost, or the fights that he has lost have been on the feet, and that's where Tukhugov is really good at. And also, by the way, nobody's taken down Tukhugov so far in the UFC. So he's never been taken down. Given Brenner, I don't think has ever been finished either. So I don't think it's going to be a complete, I don't think, there's a chance Tukhugov goes in there and knocks him out in the first round, for being honest with ourselves. I mean, the guy's a minus 500 favorite, give or take, right now. I mean, when I made the graphic minus 490, now it's all the way up to minus 500 for Tukhugov. I think he's going to win a decision. I won't trust Tukhugov to get a finish going into this fight, just considering that's not what he does all the damn time. His last finish did come back in 2020 against Aguilar, and that was his last win before the Ramos fight. It's just, again, we haven't seen Tukhugov in a while. Didn't see him in 2022. He's booked against Nate Landwehr and Lucas Almeida. Both fights didn't happen. Then he was booked against Joel Alvarez earlier in 2023, but Alvarez, of course, had to withdraw from that fight. So that's why we have Tukhugov and Brenner. Again, Tukhugov is supposed to be taking on a better fighter, and Alvarez, this fight, again, Brenner is just a way toned down version of Joel Alvarez. Again, Tukhugov has never been taken down in the UFC. Brenner, I don't think, is going to be the first guy to do so. And if Brenner is not able to get this fight on the ground, it's going to be one-way traffic on the feet for Tukhugov. Give me Tukhugov to win this one by unanimous decision in a complete mismatch. Our next fight is between Shane Young and Blake Bilder. For Bilder making his UFC debut in this fight, his last fight was a win on the Contender Series in August. It was a rear naked choke finish over Alex Morgan, which got him his UFC contract. I didn't think he was going to win the fight, honestly. I like Morgan in that fight a lot. He was 11-4 going into that one, and Blake Bilder goes in there, he gets the submission, and it wins the fight that way. And Bilder is really good, really talented guy on the ground, can really go out there, get submissions. He's a really good wrestler too, and I think that's going to create a lot of problems for Shane Young in this fight. And Shane Young, a guy who is now 2-3 in the UFC, has not won a fight in the UFC though all the way back since 2019. That was before Israel Adesanya fought Anderson Silva. His last win is over Austin Arnett. It was a good one for him. He really just shuts down Arnett in that fight, and then before that he finished Ronaldo Dye in the second round by TKO. But since then, for Young, he had that bad result against Ludovic Klein on Fight Island. He gets knocked down the first round by Klein. It was that fight where Young doesn't shake Dana White's hand during the face-offs, does his little traditional dance, and Dana White didn't really like that. Young gets booked against Omar Morales after that at UFC 260, loses in the Apex by unanimous decision. Was not a great fight. Don't go back and watch it, but Morales was able to go in there. He was able to take down Young a couple times. I mean, it wasn't really the main thing that brought Morales to victory in that fight. It was really the striking that Morales did end up winning with. I mean, won every single round in the fight. But, it was just a one-way traffic really for Morales. I mean, I would also say Shane Young's first fight in the UFC was against the guy who's in the main event tonight, Alexander Volkanovski. Volkanovski beat him by unanimous decision back on the Verdum versus Tybura card in 2017. For Shane Young, he's going to have to try to keep this fight standing. Obviously, his 2 wins so far in the UFC have been by keeping fights in the feet and out striking his opponents. He is a slight favorite in this fight, which is really weird to me. I don't get that. I get Bilder's making his UFC debut, and he is kind of old for making his UFC debut at 32, but he is the former Cage Fury featherweight champion. You know, he defended that championship once, won it back in 2021, defended it in 2022. This guy's got good power on the feet if he needs it. He's really good on the ground too, though, and I really like his aggressive wrestling style. I like the all-around grappling game out of Bilder a lot. I think it's a tough fight for Shane Young. Yeah, I think if Young is able to keep this fight standing, it does get real interesting. But again, that's a big if, and that's a big ask for Young to keep this fight standing the entire time. Because I think if Bilder is able to take this fight down, I think he's able to get a submission. I mean, I think he's capable of getting a submission. I think he's able to finish the fight down there as well. I like Bilder to win. I'm not going to pick a finish for say, because I think the pathway to a decision is more likely here, because I think Young might win a round. I think Young might see some success on the feet also, but I think especially really with the ground game of Blake Bilder, which is going to make this fight tough for Shane Young. I think the wrestling's going to be tough for him. I think the top control. And again, I think Young will win moments in the feet. Don't get me wrong, because I think all around he's a better technical striker than between him and Bilder. But all around, power-wise in the fight down to the ground, I do like Blake Bilder. So give me Bilder to win his UFC debut against Shane Young. Give me Bilder by unanimous decision. Okay, next up, we've got Loma Lookboonmee taking on Elise Reed. I feel like this fight's pretty straight up, if I'm being honest. I have not been the biggest fan of Elise Reed. I've never really picked Elise Reed. I'm not picking Elise Reed right here. I know she's 2-2 in the UFC, and I feel like every single fight that Elise Reed does have, I do pick against her. I picked her to lose to Melissa Martinez in her last fight. She beats Martinez. She looks good in the fight. I mean, she beats an undefeated Martinez in a fight that she was a, quite sizable underdog in. She wins it by unanimous decision. She knocks down Martinez in that fight. I believe it was in the first round. She knocks down Martinez early. She wins 2 out of 3 in that fight, and it was a good one for Elise Reed, right? I mean, she's 2-2 in the promotion, comes in, loses to Sijara Eubanks, where she gets completely shut out in that fight. I mean, it was all Sijara Eubanks in that fight. She comes back, she beats Corey McKenna in a fight where maybe she won, maybe she didn't, and then she gets completely shut down by Sam Hughes after that, and you're thinking, okay, she's probably going to be out the UFC after a loss to Melissa Martinez. No, she beats Martinez. She's still here. Now, she's going to be taking on Loma Lookboonmee here, of course. Lookboonee's been pretty good in the UFC, for being honest. Thailand's own. She's 4-2 now in the promotion, coming off a win over Denise Gomez in her last fight by unanimous decision. Of course, Lookboonee's never going to go out there. She's not going to get finishes. I mean, we kind of know the way she fights, but she's going to go out there. She's going to use her Muay Thai. She's going to keep her distance. She's going to kick a lot, and she's going to try to win the fight. Of course, she's 5'1", so one of the shorter fighters on the roster. I mean, Reed's 5'3", so it really won't matter, of course, at 115. But yeah, Lookboonee's going to stay on the outside. She's going to use her kicks. She's going to work the body a lot, and she's going to try to win a decision. That's how she wins most of her fights. I mean, that's how she won. She's won all of her fights so far in the UFC. So it's the win over Gomez in her last fight. Before that, losing to Lupi Godinez by unanimous decision. Beat Sam Hughes before that. Beat Jinyu Fry before that as well. And Lookboonmee does have some of these fights where if she's winning and if she's in the driver's seat and she can really just implement her game, she is just going to blow you out. Really, I mean, she's going to use her striking. She's going to take you down as well, because Lookboonmee does have some takedowns too. A lot of nice upper body stuff out of Lookboonmee. Now, Reed sometimes is able, like you saw in the Martinez fight, to work her wrestling as well. But we've also seen Elise Reed get taken down a lot too. McKenna took her down 3 times. Eubanks took her down, which ultimately led to the end of the fight. And Sam Hughes took her down 4 times, which again, in the 3rd round, ultimately ended up being the end of the fight with her and Elise Reed. So, I mean, I think Reed's takedown defense can be something to worry about here, especially against Lookboonmee, a fighter who has been able to secure takedowns and work really well down there in the past as well. And also, it's just a combination of that and Lookboonee's striking as well, which has won her fights in her Muay Thai game that everyone really does know about. So I'm going to be taking Loma Lookboonmee in this fight. I feel like it is the obvious pick. I think her wrestling and her striking as a whole is a lot better than Elise Reed. I mean, Lookboonmee is one of the bigger favorites, or I think on Tapology, as that I have seen. She's 4-2 in the UFC. I think she'll make it 5-2. Give me Loma Lookboonmee to win this fight by unanimous decision. Next up, we've got Don Shainis taking on Jack Jenkins. UFC debut here for Jenkins, coming off that win in the Contender Series just a couple months ago, winning by TKO in the 3rd round. For Jenkins, big winning streak coming now to this fight, or his first fight in the UFC. Currently on a 7-fight winning streak as Jenkins will be taking on his opponent here in Don Shainis. Shainis, fought in FAC, was the FAC lightweight champion, came into the UFC on a short notice fight against Sodiq Yusuff. He loses by guillotine choke in 30 seconds. They really did not do Shainis any favors in that fight. He was a plus 675 dog in that fight against Yusuff. Of course, Yusuff ends up winning the fight by guillotine in the 1st round, so nothing really Shainis can do in that fight. This fight, though, between Jenkins and Shainis will be interesting because you look at a guy in Don Shainis, you know, good stand-up guy, really couldn't get much going, I guess, against Tukhugov. Yusuf's a real top 15 guy in the weight class. Shainis is going to be a guy who's willing to engage in the feet. Same with Jack Jenkins. Jenkins solid on the ground. I would say Shainis does have, you know, not as great of a ground game as Jack Jenkins down there, but Jack Jenkins, you know, really solid guy on the feet, has a decent ground game as well. Should make for a very interesting fight in this one. I think Jenkins has more power, though, between him and Don Shainis. If we look at Shainis' run outside the UFC, it was a little questionable, to say the least. You look at the guys he fought. He beat a guy who was 9-7 to get into the UFC off Cage Titans. Won the FAC championship against Cody Pfister, who was 16-8-1. It beat Jay Ellis, who was 16-104 when they fought. Chris Lencioni's a good win. Beat a guy, or Lencioni was 7-2 at the time. Beat Quinton Weiland, who was 3-3. It's just, again, Shainis' record before the UFC wasn't all that impressive. For Jack Jenkins, it's, you know, I would say it's a little bit more impressive than at least Shainis'. Shainis really didn't fight anybody. Jenkins at least fought the contender, fought some guys in Eternal MMA, a well-known Australian promotion. And I do like Jack Jenkins doing this fight. I think Jenkins has more power on the feet. I think if this fight does end up on the ground, I do like Jenkins to really just work his ground game and pull off a lot of strikes down there as well. So that's why I'm going to be taking the -315 favorite in Jenkins here at home too. Again, Shainis really didn't show much to me in his first fight in the UFC, given again it was against a guy in Tukhugov who's very tough for anyone really outside the top 15 to deal with. But I'm going to be taking the more proven guy, I would say, in Jack Jenkins. Even though Jenkins hasn't fought in the UFC, I do like what I saw for him outside of the UFC. Other than, I mean, you know, Shainis really didn't fight anybody, and it's really, I don't know how good Don Shainis truly is just yet, because he fought Tukhugov, didn't look very good, but again, it is Tukhugov. So we'll see what we get out of Don Shainis this week. I think Jack Jenkins, though, is the guy to win this fight. I'm going to be taking Jenkins to win this one by first round TKO. I think whether it be by ground strikes or by him finding that big shot in the feet, Jack Jenkins will have enough to win the fight. So give me Jack Jenkins to win his UFC debut at home. Give it to him by first round TKO. So UFC debut here for Francisco Prado. He'll be taking on Jamie Mullarkey here in this fight. And for Mullarkey, booked a couple times since his fighting Michael Johnson against Nasrat Haqparast was the original fight for this date. Of course, that fight fell through. He was supposed to fight Magomed Mustafayev back in 2022 as well. But for Mullarkey, finally lands on an opponent here. And the undefeated 11-0 Francisco Prado, only 20 years old, I do believe, in Prado. And he'll be making his UFC debut this Saturday in Australia. A huge spot for him, considering, again, his opponent in Mullarkey from New South Wales in Australia as well. And for Mullarkey, honestly, I didn't think he beat Michael Johnson. I'll be honest with you. I didn't think he won that fight. You know, he ended up getting the nod by split decision, but it was a close fight, back and forth. They give Mullarkey the nod by split decision, wins fight of the night. Before that, for Mullarkey, lose to Jalen Turner, gets finished in the second round, but really no shame in that. Jalen Turner is a monster in there. Turner has been running through a lot of guys in the octagon. And Mullarkey beat Devontae Smith before that, beat Kama Worthy, knocked him out in the first round. And that was Mullarkey, of course, coming off 2 straight fights in the UFC in his first 2 fights, losing to Briar Dow, losing to Faraziem, came back, beat Worthy, beat Devontae Smith, lost to Turner, and then beat Michael Johnson after that. Mullarkey's striking game really good, obviously. I mean, you might see him use the wrestling a little bit, as you saw in the Faraziem fight, but since then, really, the 3 out of 4 wins that Mullarkey has seen in his last 4 fights have really been by the striking, and all of those fights have followed the same thing out of Mullarkey. It has been striking, win or lose. Against this opponent now, though, in Francisco Prado, Prado coming in on short notice, he's looked really good. I mean, the strength of schedule has been solid for Prado, given he's been fighting a lot of guys in these Samurai Fight House promotion in Argentina. He's usually main evented a lot of these cards. He's been fighting guys who honestly aren't, you know, the biggest name prospects. I mean, he beat a guy who was 32, Jose Barrios Vargas, in his last fight, where he beat him by TKO in the first round. For him fighting in Argentina, he's fighting some decent guys, but just like, if you know, it's not the greatest all-around independent circuit fighters. But for Prado, again, undefeated, a lot of finishes. I don't think he has seen a fight go to the scorecards yet in his career, which is crazy. Prado has, yeah, he's 5 wins by knockouts, but 5 wins by knockout, 6 wins by submission. Prado goes in there and he gets finished. He gets finishes. It is a kill or be killed mindset for Francisco Prado, and against a guy like Jamie Mullarkey, that makes for a very interesting fight, considering, again, Mullarkey is willing to swing there, he's willing to stand there and bang, and he's getting a guy, again, in Prado, who is going to offer that on the other side, too. So I think someone gets knocked out. I don't know what the over-under is for this fight, but if it's anything like a round and a half, I'd likely take the under, and I'll probably end up putting some something on it this weekend, because I'm going to be taking Jamie Mullarkey to win this fight. I think he will get a knockout. I think he'll get it done in the first round. I think you're going to see a crazy first round, of course, this fight being in Australia, in Mullarkey's home country. I think he's going to want to put on a show, and I think Prado is going to be willing to engage in this sort of fight as well. on a card like this in his UFC debut. The guy's only 20 years old. He's seen every single fight of his, has not gone to the scorecards. I don't think has gone to the scorecards. I don't think this fight's gonna go to the scorecards either. Give me Jamie Mullarkey to win this one. I like him to win by first round knockout. Should be a good one, but give it to Mullarkey. All right, we've got a flyweight fight here between Clinton Rodrigues taking on Shannon Ross. Don't know why Shannon Ross is in the UFC. I'll be honest with you. I don't know why he's here. He's 33 years old. He had his fight in the Contender Series. He loses. Vinicius Salvador beats him. Salvador knocks him out in the second round. Gets the win. Salvador has not fought yet in the UFC. He was booked against Daniel Da Silva. Fight did not end up happening. He was supposed to fight Clinton Rodrigues. Salvador withdrew, and now instead Rodrigues is going to get the guy that Salvador beat to get into the UFC and Shannon Ross. I mean, you know why Ross is in the UFC. The UFC wants him here because of this Australia card. They want him to fight under the or in front of the home fans. But man, you look at Shannon Ross before fighting in the UFC. I mean, he's got some decent wins. He went over to ACB, won a couple fights. He lost in Eternal MMA, though, by rear naked choke for the flyweight championship in 2020. Later in 2020, he won on UAE Warriors, and he had a bunch of fights canceled. Ended up getting the fight in the Contender Series, lose to Vinicius Salvador. And don't get me wrong, a very good fight, but in a fight where he got knocked down 3 times in. I mean, you know, Salvador connected on the chin a lot in that fight. And now he gets the contract anyways. And it was, oh, by the way, a fight that Ross got finished in. Don't get me wrong, very good fight, but still he lost the fight and he got finished. And now he's going to be taking on Clinton Rodrigues. Who Rodrigues, I'll be honest with you, I'm not too sold on, but I think Rodrigues is definitely better, though, than Shannon Ross. He had that close fight in his first fight back in Arizona, UFC 274 against CJ Vergara. It's a close fight. You can make the case Rodrigues won. I think he probably did, but they give the nod to Vergara. I'm not going to say it's a robbery or something. I mean, it's a close fight that Vergara does win. Rodrigues, before that, found the Contender Series, pitched a shutout against Carluto in his fight, winning by unanimous decision to get into the UFC. Fought Eduardo Henrique before that in Jungle Fight, I believe, for the Jungle Fight Flyweight Championship. Yes, he won that back in 2019. But yeah, Rodrigues is solid. I think, you know, he's got better striking definitely than Shannon Ross. I would be questionable on Shannon Ross's chin because he took some shots against Salvador. Salvador hit him a lot. Salvador put him down a lot, 3 times in that fight. Given Ross kept getting back up, but all around, I like the striking game more out of Clinton Rodrigues in this fight. There's a reason he's a -275 favorite. Rodrigues has shown in the past that he is able to go out there, he is able to get finishes. He, you know, in his fights in Brazil, he has gotten a lot of knockouts. Shannon Ross, again, one of these guys, again, like we said earlier, kill or be killed in the octagon. He is going to swing with you. I mean, again, he is going to either knock you out or he is going to die trying. If anything was made apparent in his fight against Vinicius Salvador on the Contender Series, it was exactly that. But I think that is exactly the thing why, that's exactly the reason why he's going to lose this fight to Clinton Rodrigues, because Rodrigues is going to keep putting it on him as well. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a knockout here. I'm questionable to pick it again because I hate picking knockouts really with 125 fights because they are kind of rare sometimes. So I am going to go by decision ever so slightly. I would not be surprised at all, though, if we see the knockout by Clinton Rodrigues. However, I'm going to go by decision. Give me the -275 favorite in Clinton Rodrigues to go to 1-1 in the UFC, picking up his first UFC victory with a win over Shannon Ross. Next up, we've got Joshua Culibao taking on Baghdasaryan. Even money right now in this fight for Culibao. Last fight, it was a split decision victory over Sungwoo Choi. It's a fight where Culibao knocks down Sungwoo Choi twice in that fight, gets him in the first, gets him in the second. And those are really the 2 rounds he wins. You give Sungwoo Choi the third. That's what I'd score that fight. I think one judge gave Sungwoo Choi the second round. It was a close second round, but I think Culibao did enough definitely to win the fight over in Singapore on UFC 275. Teixeira and Prohashka. Before that, for Culibao, he beat Shailan Nordembeka by unanimous decision, and that's a guy in short, Shailan Nordembeka, who 39 professional wins now. Nordembeka's looking pretty good. I mean, this is a guy who's won his last 3 fights in the UFC. He's going to be taking on Steve Garcia in his next one in Miami. It's a fight that he'll probably win again, and it keeps on looking like a better and better win for Joshua Culibao, beating Nordembeka in Nordembeka's UFC debut. Culibao's got the close fight against Charles Jordan that ends up in a split draw. Lose to Jalen Turner in his first fight, but that's going to happen to you. You know how good Jalen Turner is. Now, he's going to be taking on Baghdasaryan, and this is what makes this such a good fight, because Baghdasaryan's a guy undefeated in the UFC, 2-0. First win in the promotion was a fight against Colin Anglin. Head kicks him in the first round, July 31st, 2022. Wins that fight by knockout in the second round. Both those men were making their debuts in the promotion in that fight. Baghdasaryan wins it, gets the knockout of the night bonus as well. And then after that, beats Bruno Souza by unanimous unanimous decision over Madison Square Garden, Usman Covington 2, UFC 268. It has been over a year, though, since Baghdasaryan has fought. He was booked against TJ Laramie early in 2022. Fight did not happen because of a Baghdasaryan injury. Then booked yet again in 2022 in October of that year against Joanderson Brithu. Fight never happened. Baghdasaryan broke his hand. Fight did not end up materializing. So now we've got Culibao and Baghdasaryan. And again, even money on both sides. Culibao's only loss being the Jalen Turner fight. And you know how good Jalen Turner is. Baghdasaryan's only loss coming all the way back in his first ever professional MMA fight back in 2014. So Baghdasaryan 2-0 undefeated in the UFC, and Culibao 2-1-1 with his one loss being to a ranked guy in the tarantula in Jalen Turner. I think this fight's interesting again because you know the striking game out of Baghdasaryan is really good. When he pulls the trigger, he's very good up there. A lot of knockout finishes. He had a streak of 4 fights in 2019. Knockouts. His first 4 wins, all knockouts in under 33 seconds. I mean, the guy went on a crazy run, then he got his shot in the contender, won, and then he beat Con Anglin, then he beat Bruno Souza. This is a very tough fight for me to pick. It really is, because Joshua Culibao is fighting real damn well right now. And same can be said about Metalsik Baghdasaryan. I think it's truly one of the closest fights to pick on the entire card. There's going to be another one later that I think is really tough to pick as well. But man, I mean, I would up money on this fight because I think it's dead even, because I can definitely see a way where Baghdasaryan goes in there, knocks him out in the first round, or Culibao really, you know, avoids the storm in the first, sits down his punches, really beats Baghdasaryan that way. And I can also see a world where Baghdasaryan just beats Culibao in a 3-round fight as well. I'm going to take Baghdasaryan, and that's the option I'm going to take. I'm going to take Baghdasaryan to win this fight by decision. I think Baghdasaryan goes in there. I think he really works his strikes. I don't think he's going to have enough to knock out Culibao, because Culibao's got a pretty solid chin, but give me Metalsik Baghdasaryan to win this fight, staying undefeated in the UFC. Baghdasaryan's going to get the job done, and he'll win it by unanimous decision. So Modestas Bukauskas back in the UFC after, you know, his run ended his first time around. He beats Andreas Michailidis in his first fight, loses to Jimmy Crute after that, lose to Michelle Ozil-Shashek, and then lose to Khalil Roundtree Jr. Now, the Khalil Roundtree Jr., one of the ugliest knockouts you're going to see. I mean, it's just an oblique kick right to the side of the knee, folds Bukauskas' knee. I mean, Modestas completely, again, just gets folded with that. It was ugly. It was ugly. Roundtree wins the fight. Bukauskas was out for a while because of that injury, but then comes back to Cage Warriors, beats Lee Chadwick in his first fight, and then a couple months later, the next month, beats Chuck Campbell by TKO in the 4th round, winning the Cage Warriors light heavyweight championship. And now here he is back in the UFC, 2 fights with Cage Warriors, back in the UFC, but taking on a really tough guy in Tyson Pedro. I mean, Tyson Pedro, very good fighter. You know, took a huge layoff, as we saw, after losing to Shogun Rua in 2018. Did not fight again until 2022, where he beat Ike Villanueva, knocked out Villanueva in the first round. You knew how that fight was going to go. Villanueva, we didn't think was all that great. He beats Harry Hunsucker after that, knocks him out in the first round. Again, you knew how that fight was going to go, considering Hunsucker not the greatest guy. So again, they booked Pedro against 2 guys that he was supposed to beat, and then now he gets Modestas Bukauskas. It is a step up, don't get me wrong. It definitely is a step up from the competition that he was facing previous to Bukauskas fight, because again, Villanueva, Hunsucker, 2 guys who let's be honest, bottom of the damn barrel at 205. Now they give him a guy who, again, just making his re-entry fight back in the UFC, which is fair, but against a guy, Modestas Bukauskas, who does have some experience. But if we're being honest with ourselves, Bukauskas, even though that we aren't now high on him because of his run in Cage Warriors, winning the championship over there, he is only 1-3 in the UFC. Again, you look at his run, and he beat Michailidis, who was not very good in the UFC. Andreas Michailidis went, what, 1-3 in the UFC? Yeah, he lost to Bukauskas, beat KB Buller, who was horrible in the UFC, lose to Alex Pereira, and then lose to Rinat Fakhretdinov after that, right? I mean, he didn't have that great a run in the UFC, and that's Bukauskas' only win. And the losses, Crute, okay, Ozil-Shashek, okay, Roundtree, okay. There's some good guys, but man, it points towards a Tyson Pedro win here. And again, I'm glad Bukauskas is in the UFC. He will definitely get another fight after this. He deserves to be in the promotion, but this is pointing towards a Tyson Pedro knockout in the first round. This is really what it is, I think, to me. I think Pedro's got the power advantage. Bukauskas does have some solid striking, but really, again, this fight is set up for the -250 favorite in Tyson Pedro to go in here and win. At home, in Australia, you know, first fight card for the UFC in Australia since pre-COVID. Tyson Pedro's going to come out here and he's going to knock out Modestas Bukauskas in the first round. That's what's going to happen. I mean, we're being honest. That's what's going to happen in this fight. Pedro's look very good, and again, they are working him back up to getting to type of fights. Hell, when he lost to Shogun Rua is still in the top 15, right? They are pushing Pedro to get back to that point where he can fight borderline top 15 guys. Bukauskas is just another step on that ladder. Give me Tyson Pedro to win this fight. I like Pedro to go out there and pick up a first round knockout win, going now 6-3 in the UFC and making this win part of his 3-fight winning streak. Next up, we have got Jimmy Crute taking on Alonzo Menifield. Someone's getting knocked out here, for being honest with ourselves. I mean, these two guys come in there to swing. It's a killer be killed mindset with these two guys. It is. I mean, Jimmy Crute's last couple of fights got finished twice in the first round. His last two ones, given the Anthony Smith fight, I mean, it was a leg injury out of Jimmy Crute where he does, you know, really mess up his leg, but still out wrestles Anthony Smith at the end of the first round and probably maybe wins that first round. I mean, honestly, it's a close first round, but of course he can't continue, so Anthony Smith wins the fight. Then after that, Crute is booked against the now champion, which is crazy to say, but the world champion in Jamal Hill, and of course, you know, Jamal Hill knocks him out in 48 seconds. And now here Jimmy Crute is back at home now, fighting against Alonzo Menifield. And Crute was really looking pretty good before these two losses against the step-up in competition in Smith and Hill. Beat Modestas Bukauskas by knockout in the first round, submitted Michal Zolshashek by a Kimura in the first round, did get Peruvian necktied by Misha Cirkunov in 2019, and before that won a big winning streak to start his UFC career against Paul Craig in his first fight, Kimura in the third round, and then knocked out Sam Alvey after that at UFC 234. Crute will be taking on Alonzo Menifield here, and Menifield back-to-back, God, I can't talk today. First round finishes, Misha Cirkunov the last one, first round knockout, and then, I mean, Askar Morozov, the guy, of course, who had the fake record. He's 17-13, and he was on roids, and oh man, I mean, Menifield finished him in the first round. And yeah, Alonzo Menifield's fighting well right now. 1-4 of his last 5, the only loss being to Will Knight, beat Fabio Charant by Von Flue at UFC 260, and then beat Ed Herman by unanimous decision at UFC 265. I mean, I'm not going to give away the pick just yet, but man, plus 195 for Alonzo Menifield looks really good right now. I'm not, like, honestly, plus money for Menifield in a fight like this. I know, yes, he probably should be the underdog, but I would say a slight underdog because there's a pathway to victory 100% for Menifield. If Crute stands there and swings with them, there's a chance Crute gets knocked out. Now, I will make the case again, though. Crute is a lot better on the ground than Alonzo Menifield is, by far. And yes, Menifield did pull off the crazy Von Flue against Fabio Charant. I think that's a once-in-a-lifetime type of deal. I don't think that's going to happen again, per se, but I think there's a possibility, again, that if Crute can take this one down, he has a definite advantage down there. But will he, though? Because I think he's going to stand there. I think he will throw out Menifield. And you never want to say the moment's going to be too big for a fighter. But I think there's definitely a chance that it could be just that in this fight. Because, again, Crute, his last 2 fights, big names. Smith, that was the first fight back with the crowd on pay-per-view in Jacksonville. The Jamal Hill fight was a huge fight for him. They got knocked down in the apex in 90 seconds. Now you give him a shot after, you know, losing back-to-back fights. You put him in an opportunity at home on the main card opener of a UFC pay-per-view in Australia, the first card they've had in Australia since 2020. It's a big deal, and Menifield's been on a roll as well. I like Alonzo Menifield in this fight. I think this fight stays standing. I think Menifield's able to land that big power shot, and yeah, give me Alonzo Menifield here, especially at plus money. And you know, if Menifield's going to win, it will likely be by knockout as well, considering Crute's last 2 results as well. Give me Alonzo Menifield to go in here on the road. I think he beats Jimmy Crute, and I think he knocks him out in the first round. So with a big start to the pay-per-view portion, give me Alonzo Menifield to knock out Jimmy Crute in the very first round. Okay, yeah, so another knockout's most likely, oh, it's coming here. Justin Tafa, Parker Porter. Now, actually, well, if Parker Porter wins, there's a chance it's not a knockout, because Porter's not really, for being a big guy in the heavyweight division who does fill out that entire 265-pound frame, he doesn't get knockouts. He hasn't gotten one yet in the UFC. He's 3-2, and his second loss being a really tough loss to Jaitan Almeida, getting subbed in the first round. I mean, that's what's going to happen to you when you fight a guy like Jaitan Almeida. But yeah, Porter's actually been pretty solid so far. You look at his first fight, I mean, it's a tough fight. He got chalked up against Chris Daukaus. It's going to happen to you. Daukaus' first fight in the UFC, Porter's first fight in the UFC. Daukaus knocks him out in the first round. What you going to do about it? After that, Porter goes in there. He beats Josh Parisian in a back-and-forth fight. Porter beats him by decision, beats Chase Sherman after that. And both of those fights are pretty identical, really. I mean, I hate to say it, but this is what I say it is. It's the low-level heavyweight fighting, really, and guys who don't really get knockouts in Porter, Sherman, and Parisian. But they go out there, they strike, and, you know, and even Alain Baudot, too, we're going to talk about in a second. But really, right, Parker Porter won those fights by decision. Doesn't do anything all that impressive, but just does enough, keeps volume, and outstrikes his opponent. Again, Porter's not the knockout guy at heavyweight, but he will go out there and he will put strikes on you, and he will pressure you, and sometimes he will, you know, he'll win the fight that way. The Alain Baudot fight's interesting because Porter took down Alain Baudot, and Alain Baudot has a very obvious weakness to his game. It is the ground game. Alain Baudot, pure kickboxer. His kickboxing really isn't even all that as well. He went 0-4 in the UFC, but Parker Porter went in there, exploited the game plan, came in there, took him down. That's how he won the fight. Outstruck Alain Baudot, needed as well, but yes, Parker Porter won the fight. His opponent's Justin Tafa here, the bad man, Justin Tafa. Started his UFC career losing to Yorgande Castro in a very similar spot to what this is, really, right? I mean, it's Tafa fighting at home. That fight was at Marvel Stadium, Whitaker Adesanya, UFC 243. Tafa's now here in Australia fighting Parker Porter, a guy that he's supposed to beat, but will he? I mean, that fight that Tafa lost to Yorgande Castro put a lot of hype onto Yorgande Castro. I ain't gonna lie. I mean, hell, I was hyped for Yorgande Castro after that. I mean, I picked Yorgande Castro to beat Greg Hardy because I was like, damn, look at the way he knocked out Justin Tafa. Now, he lost to Hardy, lost to Felipe, lost to Jarvis Danho, you know, won on CES, beat Sean Asher on Eagle FC, and now owns a victory over, Junior Dos Santos. And now Yorgande Castro is going to go to the PFL. He's going to fight Ante Delia. Let's be honest, he's going to lose to Ante Delia. But it's an interesting fight that will main event a PFL card later this year. But for Tafa, lose to De Castro, beats Juan Adams. It's going to happen to you. I mean, it's going to happen. Juan Adams isn't the greatest. You went to Adams' hometown of Houston, Texas, and beat him. Juan Adams now the PFL zone. Then Tafa lost to Carlos Felipe, lost to Jared Vanderaa. He was given another shot, and Justin Tafa is the first UFC fighter in history to miss weight at 265 pounds. Yes, he could not weigh in at 265 pounds. He weighed in at 267, nothing less. He got a pretty cool knockout where he sent Harry Hunsucker's head into oblivion, where he knocked him out, and now here he is against Parker Porter. Okay, I think Tafa wins. I think he knocks out Porter, but there's a definite chance Porter could go out here and win the fight as well. I think if Porter stays on the outside and doesn't really let Tafa swing big, you know, doesn't let the Mark Hunt prodigy swing big, Porter could win, right? If Porter just stays on the outside and does what he did to Chase Sherman and does what he did, you know, maybe looks for a takedown like he did against Alain Baudot, given Tafa's a huge guy. Same with Porter. I mean, just two huge heavyweights in the ring for this fight, or in the octagon for this fight. Again, I think Porter's got a pathway to victory. Do I think he tries it? Sure. Do I think he's successful with it? No. I think Tafa's extra aggressive and ultra aggressive in this fight, similar to what he was in the Yorgande Castro fight, like he was when he fought in Australia last time, which again could come back to bite him in the ass. But I think an aggressive Justin Tafa goes out there and chases the knockout and puts down Parker Porter and finishes him. Give me Justin the bad man Tafa to beat Parker Porter. He's gonna get the win by first round knockout at -140. Give it to him. Again, first round knockout for the bad man Justin Tafa. So Jack Della Maddalena gets a shot here at home in Australia, and he gets a step up in competition. Randy Brown is definitely the step up in competition that is needed for Jack Della Maddalena. I mean, you look at his first 4 fights, or actually 3 fights in the UFC, one being the Contender Series against Angelosa, but you look at his fights in the UFC, first round knockout win over P. Rodrigues, first round knockout win over Ramzan Ameev, first round knockout win over Danny Roberts. Now here he is against Randy Brown. The Rude Boy's a good fighter. Randy Brown, don't get me wrong, very talented guy coming off a decision win over Francisco Trinado. 4-fight winning streak for Randy Brown since losing to Vicente Luque in August of 2020. He has won 6 out of his last 7. Again, the only loss being Luque, but he's won 6 out of his last 7 since 2019. Randy Brown is a legitimate UFC fighter. He is 10-4 in the promotion. This guy's legit. And now if Jack Maddalena can A, go in there and run through Randy Brown, and B, win the fight. I mean, this is just, if he runs through Randy Brown, truly you're looking at a guy who's going to be in the top 10 any day now. Because this is a serious step up in competition. Maddalena hasn't seen any danger, has not faced any danger so far. I would say the fight he's been the most dangerous in, and it wasn't even a fight that he wasn't in all that much danger, was the Angelosa fight. He beats Losa every single round. Losa was able to connect a little bit in the first round against him, but other than that, I mean, he won every single round in that fight. He knocked out P. Rodrigues in the first round, knocked out Ameev in the first round with a body punch, and then beat Danny Roberts, knocked him down twice in the span of 3 minutes, right? I mean, Maddalena's truly on a different level right now, striking against some of these guys. We will see, though, especially against a guy like Randy Brown. Given it's a very tough task for Randy Brown going on the road, fighting a guy with all this hype in the world, one of the most hyped up prospects UFC has to offer in Della Maddalena, don't get me wrong, but I think Randy Brown will offer some different things to Jack Della Maddalena in this fight. Now, Ramzan Ameev did take down Della Maddalena in their fight in Singapore at UFC 275. I think Brown will attempt to do so. Maybe, but honestly, I think you're gonna see, honestly, you probably won't even see that. You're probably just gonna see Randy Brown trying to outstrike Jack Della Maddalena. No one's been able to do it just yet, but if anyone's gonna do it, it will be Randy Brown, considering the way Brown does strike. Brown, a very long fighter, 78-inch reach for the rude boy Randy Brown. Jack Della Maddalena coming back at you at 73-inch reach, right? Brown is a huge fighter. He's 6'3", Maddalena's 5'11". He's going to try to keep his distance. He's going to try to put it on Maddalena that way, which, sure, I mean, is a way for Randy Brown to win the fight. Power-wise, Maddalena's got more power, but Brown does have a lot of power in his own right, so I think in a back-and-forth fight makes for a very interesting one, considering, again, Brown can offer a lot of power back at Jack Maddalena, but there's a reason Della Maddalena is a minus 325 favorite. It's because Vegas and, you know, people who are betting on this fight and the fans know how good this guy is. He has not been in danger so far in the UFC. And yes, I think Randy Brown will put him in some spots. I think Brown will hit him with something, but it just feels, again, like this is a fight that Della Maddalena is going to win, and it's a fight that Della Maddalena will continue the hype train with. I mean, I really think he gets touched a little bit, but I think Maddalena finds his way to get inside. I think he's going to connect a lot on Randy Brown. I think he's going to knock out Randy Brown the first round. I think it's and again, if this truly does happen, it is going to be absolutely huge for Della Maddalena, because again, Randy Brown has won 6 out of his last 7. But if JDM's able to do this, he's really going to secure himself as one of the top guys in this weight class, especially one of the top prospects here at 170, and really we're going to see him against top 10 guys after this. It's crazy. Again, Maddalena's already a minus 325 favorite against a guy, again, who I keep saying has won 6 out of his last 7, and his only loss being to Vicente Luque. Randy Brown is so talented, but I think this goes to show you the level of hype and the level of talent Jack Della Maddalena truly does have. I think he finds the big power shot. I think he puts down Randy Brown in the first round, and I think he wins the fight by first round knockout. Give me Jack Della Maddalena to remain undefeated in the UFC. I think he goes to 4-0 again. The guy is just, you know, he's won his last 13 fights after dropping his first 2 professional fights in 2016. Since then, 13 in a row. I think he makes it 14 in a row with a first-round knockout win over the rude boy Randy Brown. Again, Maddalena gets it done. First-round knockout win. In the co-main event for the interim featherweight championship, the winner, assuming will fight Alexander Volkanovski next, we have got Yair Rodrigues taking on Josh Emmett for El Pantera, the win over Brian Ortega in Long Island. Now, again, it was a TKO finish for Yair Rodrigues, but it was a shoulder injury by Brian Ortega that lost him the fight. Now, Rodrigues was coming off the loss to Max Holloway before that. It was an impressive fight. I mean, because really, it was at that time where Holloway was running through all these guys in the weight class, and Rodrigues was one of the guys, or pretty much the only guy other than Volkanovski, to win rounds against Max Holloway. And given Holloway just, I don't think he's ever going to get the championship, because considering he's lost 3 times to Volkanovski, and now we're going to see Holloway versus Arnold Allen, and it kind of just feels to me like that's another fight that I like Arnold Allen, but I feel like that's a fight to me where Max Holloway's just going to win, and Holloway is just going to send Allen back down the ladder, even though I like Arnold Allen a lot, but I just think Max is still kind of on a higher level than some of these guys. I think Max will probably beat him, and then it's just, okay, Max is going to keep turning down all these guys before they get to Volkanovski. But similar to what happened to Yair Rodrigues, you know, Max turned him down, but Yair got through Brian Ortega in a fight where Ortega gets injured, and now he gets a shot at the championship, or the interim championship, against Josh Emmett. Now, for Josh Emmett, you know, a win over Calvin Kattar in his last fight by split decision in San Antonio, Texas. He didn't win the fight. I thought Kattar won that one. I really thought Kattar beat Josh Emmett. Emmett gets the nod by split decision. It's a good fight, don't get me wrong, goes all 5 rounds, but Emmett gets the win. Before that, he beats Dan Ige in a fight where it was close. Don't get me wrong, it was close. I thought Emmett did enough to get the victory. He knocks down Ige in the first. And that's something that we got to talk about, Josh Emmett. He's a guy that can go a lot. He can go for a while in the octagon. He's got a lot. He's big gas tank out of Josh Emmett, but he always swings hard as well. I mean, really, the Calvin Kattar fight was the first fight, I believe, in Josh Emmett's UFC career since he lost at Desmond Green in 2017 on Cormier versus Rumble Johnson 2. That was the first fight, the Calvin Kattar fight, where Josh Emmett since then hadn't knocked down his opponent. Emmett is so consistent with the power, with the knockdowns. Kattar was the first guy that he didn't knock down. He's going to have to knock down, I think, Yair Rodrigues to win this fight, because you know the cardio, you know the gas tank Rodrigues brings, you know the all-out striking that Rodrigues is going to bring back at Josh Emmett as well. It will be a very tough fight for Emmett. But if Emmett can land the power, and if Emmett can you know, consistently put down Yair, or make Yair affected by the power shots that Emmett's going to bring, it's going to be a tough fight for Rodrigues. I mean, but at the same time, if Emmett can't knock down Rodrigues, and if Rodrigues doesn't really feel the power that Emmett's presenting, okay, Rodrigues can stand in there, take some of those shots, and really keep on pressing forward. It's an incredibly tough fight to pick. I really do think it is. We talk about Yair Rodrigues, though, because you look at his fights. Okay, he is 1-1 in his last 2. And before that, he had the win over Jeremy Stephens, where he beats him by unanimous decision. Obviously, you know, Rodrigues didn't fight for 2 or 3 years. He's booked against to beat Magomed Sharipov. Fight never happened. Magomed Sharipov now retired. Booked earlier against Max Holloway. Fight never happened because of a Holloway injury. Gets the Holloway fight, loses, then beats Brian Ortega. And that's really all he's gotten to get the championship fight, which is interesting because I don't really think, if we're being honest, does Yair really deserve the title fight? Because, yes, I know we think Yair is the number 3 guy in the weight class, which he probably is. But when you really look at it, though, right, he loses to Max Holloway. Sure, he doesn't get blown out by Holloway like a lot of these guys do get, like Calvin Kattar and like some of these other guys. But still, he loses the fight, and then now he beats, you know, Ortega in a fight where you like to see that fight probably happen again. Obviously, TC is not ready to have that fight again, but now he's getting a title shot. I would just say Emmett's a little bit more deserving, and I definitely say Arnold Allen's a little bit more deserving. Not that I think Rodrigues is bad, not that I think, again, I think Rodrigues is the number 3 guy in this weight class. I think he is. Until we see this fight between him and Emmett, I think Rodrigues truly is number 3 in the weight class. It's just that in terms of deserving the title shot, I don't know if Rodrigues is all that deserving of it. Now, don't get me wrong. Was Volkanovski's championship fight against Korean Zombie, was Zombie all that deserving of the championship fight? Hell no, he wasn't. But it's just, it's getting to this point in the weight class, right, where you need guys, you need challengers. I mean, you're looking at a guy like Movsar Evloev probably coming up next that can get a shot at the championship. Hell, even Ilia Topuria probably soon as well, because he's undefeated. Evloev's undefeated. Calvin Kattar, if he can get healthy again. But really, it's like Arnold after this. It's Allen. It's going to be the winner of Rodrigues Emmett, who's going to present themselves as a new title challenger. I think for now, I think Allen's going to get sent back down the ladder because I think Holloway's going to beat him. And then what? They do Holloway, Ilia Topuria, which is a good fight, but like, I think Holloway probably beats some of these guys. It's just tough considering when you got the number 1 contender as the main gatekeeper and the best gatekeeper in all of mixed martial arts. That's just the way this 145-pound weight class does go. And since, again, Alexander Volkanovski in the main event, who knows if Volk can pull off the upset and Volkanovski can beat Islam Makhachev. We're going to talk about that next, but if he can do that, then hell, is this interim title even needed? Because then maybe the winner of this fight is the world champion. I don't know, right? But considering when we look back at this fight, you got Rodrigues at -155, you got Emmett at +135. This is all dependent on Josh Emmett's power. If Emmett can put down Rodrigues multiple times in this fight, I think he wins. If he can put him down once, I still think he can have the fight. Because I think it will limit the volume that Rodrigues will throw back at him. It's all dependent on that. If not, I think if Emmett gets into a fight like he did against Calvin Kattar, where given it's a good back and forth fight, the guys are trading on the feet. Sure, that's great. But in a fight like that, Yair's more equipped to win it than Calvin Kattar is. And I still think Kattar beat Emmett in that fight. But if Emmett's not knocking down Rodrigues, and Rodrigues is throwing back, I think Yair wins the fight. And that's why I'm going to take Yair Rodrigues to win this one by unanimous decision. I think Yair is going to become the interim champion. Again, he will be deserving of the championship if he wins the fight. All I'm saying is I don't know if he's deserving of the shot. If he wins the fight, then sure, he is deserving of the championship, and he is deserving of the opportunity to get the shot against Alexander Volkanovski. That's all I'm saying. I think Yair's an incredibly talented fighter. I'm excited to see him in this fight against Josh Emmett. I think he's going to win the fight against Josh Emmett. I was just making the case that maybe he's not all that deserving of this shot. Maybe he needed to go win another fight before getting this opportunity. But when you really look at it, okay, who else do you want him to fight? That's all I'm saying, right? Maybe Arnold Allen should be in the fight over him. That's fine. Yair is going to win the fight. He's going to become the interim champion. I think, again, Emmett's not able to put him down. I think Yair is able to walk through a lot of those punches, and I think he's just able to throw right back at Josh Emmett. I think he's going to damage Emmett a lot. Emmett does eat damage pretty well, same with Yair. So I think it's going to be a real, vicious fight. And I think it's going to be a grueling fight. But give me El Pantera, Yair Rodrigues, to become the new interim featherweight champion, putting himself in a shot against Alexander Volkanovski up next. But yes, give me El Pantera to win this one by unanimous decision, becoming the interim champion. So the main event, Islam Makhachev taking on Alexander Volkanovski, champion versus champion for the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world. Again, #1, the pound-for-pound rankings is stupid, but really this is for the pound-for-pound title. We've got Makhachev and Volkanovski. Of course, Alexander the Great Volkanovski, the featherweight champion, taking on the 155-pound champion over here at lightweight in Islam Makhachev. Makhachev -380, Volkanovski +310. It's such a tough fight for Volkanovski. It is. I mean, it's a tough... Makhachev's going to be a tough fight for anybody. I won't lie to you. I picked Charles Oliveira to beat him. I was one of the people who picked Oliveira to win that fight. It didn't happen. I think Alexander Volkanovski is the best fighter on the planet right now. You're not going to find a bigger Volkanovski fan than me. I am a huge Volkanovski fan. I think this guy is legitimately, again, I think if he beats Islam Makhachev, we have to start talking about Alexander Volkanovski as the greatest fighter of all time. Really. If he beats Makhachev and becomes champ, I'm going to consider Volkanovski the greatest fighter ever. That might change in a month if John Jones beats Cyril Gane, but still, I think Volkanovski should be given that title of greatest fighter ever if he beats Makhachev this Saturday night. It's a very tall task, though. I mean, let's not get this confused. It is a very tough order for Volkanovski to go in here and beat Makhachev. He gets it at home, but man, I mean, has Makhachev really been in any danger? Since I know the Adriano Martins fight back in 2015, I'm not going to talk about that where Makhachev got knocked out. Since then, Makhachev has been dominant. He's ran through everybody. He's out-wrestled everybody. And there hasn't been any answers the other way. Given his path to championship, we talked about this in great detail before the Oliveira fight, he hadn't really fought anybody. Let's be honest. I mean, he beat Drew Dober. He beat Thiago Moises. He beat Dan Hooker. I am a huge Bobby Green fan. I love Bobby Green. But he beat Bobby Green to get a championship fight. And then he beat Charles Oliveira. Okay, he's legit. He beat Oliveira. Let's not get it twisted. But now you get Makhachev and Volkanovski here, right? And like, you know, Volkanovski's a step up. It is. But man, I just feel like Volkanovski's small for the weight. He's 5'6". I know, you know, many moons ago, Alexander Volkanovski used to fight at 170. Sure. But he's 5'6". He doesn't look as small. I didn't think I think it was Media Day or something, when he stood next to Makhachev, he didn't look as small as I thought he was going to look, but still, Volk is 5'6", Makhachev is 5'10". It is obviously the fight that needed to be made considering the way Volkanovski's running through his weight class. It's the fight that has to be made to see if Volkanovski can get those 2 championships. I'm not the biggest fan of fighters going for 2 belts, but especially in this case, it makes all the sense in the world that Volkanovski is given the opportunity to do so. Like, if Prado gets the shot at Jamal Hill, I don't like that, just considering, you know, even if Prado beats Adesanya, I think there are other fights for him at 185 that he has to go through in order for him to go up to 205 and either fight Prochazka or Jamal Hill, right? I mean, for Prado, I think he's still got to beat Whitaker. I think he's still got to go through maybe a Jared Cannonier. You know, right? He still got to go through some of these guys before he's able to go up and challenge for a second belt. In this case, it makes all the sense in the world, and it makes sense that Volkanovski's getting this championship fight. But can he really beat Islam Makhachev? That's my problem. Can he really go out there and win this fight? Because you know what Makhachev's going to bring. His striking is getting better too. It's the Khabib effect. We talked about this, and especially whenever I mention Khabib versus Conor McGregor, and people say, oh yes, Khabib knocked down Conor. Yes, he did. Right? It's not that Conor McGregor is a worse striker than Khabib Nurmagomedov. Obviously, Conor McGregor is a better striker than Khabib. That is, you know, no one's ever going to deny that, right? But it was Conor's, you know, being scared of the takedown and being scared of the wrestling game that Khabib presents that made him drop his hands because he's waiting for the takedown, which led Khabib to knock him down and ultimately chase him towards a takedown, right? In this fight, it gets tricky, because it's going to be the same way, and that's what happened in the Charles Oliveira fight, right? That's what happened with Makhachev and Oliveira. I mean, I still think Oliveira's a better striker than Islam Makhachev, but it's just the dominant wrestling game that Makhachev brings that's what it's always going to, you know, it's always going to come into play. It's always going to come into play, and it's going to make his striking better, right? So if there are moments where Makhachev is tagging Volkanovski, it is because of that, you know, of that circumstance. We're going to see. I think Volkanovski's, you know, if he can keep this fight standing, I think he's going to win the fight. But it's a huge ask for him. Volk does not get taken down often. Brian Ortega took him down twice, and that's something that is going to be brought up a lot. The situations that Volkanovski was put in against Brian Ortega, if Brian Ortega can do that to you, what is Islam Makhachev going to do? And especially if Volkanovski up a weight class, is not his natural weight, he's going up. It's just such a tough fight for him. Chad Mendes took him down 3 times, right? Again, that fight was a long time ago. It was in 2018. Eventually, yes, Volkanovski did knock him out, but still Mendes was able to take him down. You know, Volkanovski's not a bad wrestler. He is not a bad wrestler. He's a good wrestler in his own right. But it's just these Dagestani guys, and especially Islam Makhachev, who has been, you know, marked as the next Khabib Nurmagomedov. It's so tough for Volk. And I want to pick Volkanovski so bad. I've been the biggest fan of Volkanovski. I've picked Volkanovski pretty much in every single fight he has been in since he's won the championship. I have been, you know, I've been a big guy. I've been a big pusher of the agenda that Alexander Volkanovski is the best pound for pound fighter in the world, because he is the best pound for pound fighter in the world. And if he beats Makhachev again, I truly think he is the greatest fighter of all time. But man, again, it is such a difficult ask considering the way that Makhachev fights. No one's been able to beat Makhachev, except for Martins once. Okay, whatever. That was a long time ago. Volkanovski's going to have to catch him. Volkanovski's going to have to catch him on the feet. He's going to have to make Makhachev worry that if he shoots in for a takedown, Volkanovski's going to do damage on him. Volkanovski's going to have to kick out the legs of Makhachev. But that is tricky, though, considering if Makhachev catches one, then boom, he's going to dump Volkanovski right back down. Man, it is tough. It is so tough for Volk. Volk's going to have to keep the fight on the feet. He's going to have to fight off the takedowns. If he's not able to, Makhachev's going to win the fight. And again, as much as I want Volkanovski to win, and as much as I am going to be the biggest, enjoyer of the Volkanovski victory, if Volkanovski's able to pull off the upset in Australia against Makhachev, if he's the champ, the double champ, I am going to go insane, and I'm gonna have so much fun watching the fight. I hope it happens. I just don't think it will. I can't pick against Makhachev in this spot. And again, I picked Charles Oliveira to beat Makhachev. I did. But man, I cannot bring myself to pick Alexander Volkanovski to win this fight just because I don't truly know how he does it. Because I don't think he's going to be able to stop 8 takedowns out of Makhachev. I think if Volkanovski wins, it's going to have to be that he survives the first 3 rounds, Makhachev gets tired, and Volkanovski drags him into deep waters and either finishes him in the 4th or 5th or wins the 3rd and wins 3, 4, 5 and wins a decision. If he's not able to do that, I don't think Volkanovski's going to win the fight. I don't think Volk's able to go out there and knock him out with 1 punch early in the fight as well. I think it's going to take some time, and I think it's going to take Makhachev maybe, to tire a little bit for Volkanovski to get the win. It's such a tough task for Alexander Volkanovski. It's not one that I'm willing to say that he is going to automatically win the fight because of. Give me the champion, Islam Makhachev, to retain the 155-pound championship, and give me Volkanovski to go back down and probably dust up Yair Rodrigues in his next fight. So that does it for UFC 284. We've got Islam Makhachev remaining the world champion by 2nd round submission over the great Alexander Volkanovski. Next week, it is, man, Thiago Santos, Aaron Blanchfield is a good main event. The rest of the card is horrible. Co-main event, Zach Pounga taking on Jordan Wright. Will Knight versus Marcin Prokhnio, Josh Parisian versus Jamal Pogues, and we have got Juan Camilo Ronderos taking on Clayton Carpenter to fill out the main card. It is bad. It is a bad fight card with 10 fights on it. My goodness, we need to get out the apex so these fight cards stop. It doesn't get much better because after that, we have got Nikita Krylov and Ryan Spann in a main event as well. So, folks, that'll do it for UFC 284. Make sure that subscribe button down below if you haven't yet, though. Make sure to hit that like button, too, if you did enjoy the video. Thanks again for watching, and Mamba forever.